So let's talk a little bit about good and evil. So the phenomenon of dividing reality into good and evil is basically a consequence of the experience of attraction and repulsion to objects that we go through. Whatever we are repelled by, we label as bad, and whatever we are attracted to, we label as good. But if you look at the situation, if you're like, imagine you're in space and there is a point A and a point B, and you're attracted towards point B. So attraction towards point B is the same thing as repulsion from point A. And imagine that you are at point A and you're repelled from point A to another point C. And the repulsion from point A is same as attraction towards point C. So it's clear that attraction and repulsion are inextricably linked. Cannot have one without the other. It's yin and yang, basically. Complementary dualities. Just like you can't have left without right, you can't have back without front, you can't have up without down, you can't have crest without trough. You can't have good without evil. So actually, there is no such thing as good or evil. There is just the absolute truth, which imposes limitations upon itself by believing itself to be the ego, as we have discussed. And that limitation creates duality and division, basically. That which is one divides itself into two, into apparent two, by imposing duality upon itself in the form of the ego. And so the ego and the world, as we've discussed, the ego and the world are the ingredients of the experience of any individual human being. And that world is further divided by the ego into good and evil, like and dislike. But as soon as you like or dislike something, you are unwisely rejecting that which is, because even the so called evil things are a part of reality, whether we like it or not. And in fact, the suffering that is produced by that which we call evil drives us deeper into ourselves. So, and that phenomenon of being driven deeper into oneself leads to wisdom, and wisdom in turn heals the suffering that one experiences. So it's like a circular thing in which suffering leads to the search for the solution for suffering, and therefore suffering is sort of self-consuming. So evil births good because, as in what we call evil, that which is causing suffering, births the desire for healing, that which we call good. And on the other hand, good births evil because, let's take examples. Drugs are really ecstatic at the beginning, but if you overdo it, it becomes a source of immense suffering. Romantic relationships are ecstatic at the beginning, euphoric at the beginning, but invariably problems and and imperfections and um, conflicts arise even in the most intimate relationships, and familiarity breeds contempt over time, and familiarity breeds boredom over time. So even that which is good turns into that which seems to be bad over time. Another consideration is that often what is good for one is bad for the other. For example, in a match between India and Pakistan, if India wins, that is bad for Pakistan, and if Pakistan wins, that is bad for India. So, the indivisible nature of reality implies that there is no such thing as good or bad. It's an arbitrary limitation that the mind has the ability to impose upon reality. So, it's reality that imposes the idea of good and evil upon reality. So, it's a threefold division. The first division is between self and other. The next division is the other divided into like and dislike, basically. So, if we collapse the arbitrary division of the other into like and dislike, the degree of division that has been imposed upon reality can be reduced from self, like, and dislike to just self and other. And going even deeper, the division between self and other can also be collapsed into the absolute truth because it is the absolute truth that's arising as and appearing as both self and other. So this is not about the victory of good over evil. This is about the transcendence of good and evil, which is the transcendence of creation and manifestation. Because the very process of life is the process of running away from pain and pursuing pleasure. That is what we are all engaged in. Running away from the so called bad and running towards the so called good. But everything has a price. If you want a luxurious life, you have to work for it. You have to earn the money required to have that luxurious life in most cases, unless you're born rich, which is a rare phenomenon. If you want to get good at the guitar, you have to put in hours of practice, which is extremely painful and boring at many points along the journey. So, a so called good guitarist has gone through the maximum so called bad times because of the immense pain of practicing. So, if you just go straight to the absolute truth, which is here and now, the concept of good and evil breaks down because it's that which is one and indivisible is not in the realm of duality. It cannot be judged as good or evil. So, this is actually a very deep topic. The entire field of ethics is basically the study of good and evil. Movies are centrally based in the conflict between good and evil. Tragedies are basically evil prevailing over good, and poetic justice is good prevailing over evil in the conventional way of looking at things. But as we have seen, good and evil are like yin and yang. Good births evil, evil leads to good, and the cycle continues over time. But consciousness, which is the absolute truth and which is expressing as all form, is beyond all form and is the source of all form. So it is expressing as both the so called good and the so called evil.